the last one, the template method pattern. So in here, this is most important pattern, especially like when you are planning to develop frameworks. So how we are going to implement separate life cycle methods, and those things you can do with using this template method pattern, right? So in here there is a principle behind this, so we call it as a Hollywood principle. So in this head first design pattern book, the same principle that it's there, so I use the same image as it is, right? So the first principle it's going to cover, don't call us, we will call you. So that's what the principle there when we implement life cycle methods, because life cycle methods the framework will call, right? But you can't call these life cycle methods manually. For example, let's say in here I'm going to develop something like this. So we'll see what's the life cycle method, right? Let's say I'm going to create my class, right? So in this class I can implement set of methods. Let's say start method is there, service method is there, right? Stop method is there, like this. So if it is a life cycle method, the order of execution is predefined. Let's say if it is a start method, you execute this one first, then this one second, then this one third. So you can't change the execution order under any circumstances. That's why we call it as life cycle, right? And for example, when we discuss like an algorithm implementation, all the steps. Algorithm is something that gives the solution for a given problem with having set of steps. So these steps you can't interchange. So it's also would behave as something like life cycle. So this methods, this is also something like this. You can't interchange like this first, right? So that means the execution order. So the start, service, stop methods, you can't override the order of execution. That means order of execution is already called so by the framework. That's why this principle they introduce, you can't modify and change this order with calling separate methods. So that's why we call it as don't call us, we will call you. There we means that the framework it's going to handle, right, and implement. So in this example, let's say I'm going to implement these methods. So then definitely there should be another class. So for example, let's say if it is a framework, so I have to have another class like this. Oh, interface. If it is an interface, so most probably since you are going to call some other methods you have to implement in here, it's better you can use a class or abstract class, right? So within the framework, you have to have these methods: start, service, stop. But how you are going to implement, how you are going to specify the order? Now within the framework, again you have to specify the order. So in here let's say stop. There should be another method. Let's say template. In here you have to implement the order of execution, right? So this framework will call these methods with having a separate method. So this method specify who is the first caller and who is the second one, who is the third one, like this. But we should ensure that we can't change this, right? So if you can't change, that means you can't override this framework specific method. Therefore this method you have to specify as final. If you use final keyword for a method, that means you can't override, right? If you use final keyword for a class, you can't extend, right, that class. Similarly, if you use final keyword for a template, that means you can't change the order of execution in this lifecycle method, right? So if you use any framework, like if you use servlet, I think you have already learned with using the JSP and servlet example. So JSP contains some lifecycle methods, right? And servlet again there are some lifecycle methods: init, service, destroy, do, get, do, post, and like that. So within that also again the implementation they implemented using the template method pattern, right? So initially the problem in here is how you specify this order and call them according to these predefined steps, right? So how we are going to implement these predefined steps with a separate method you have to implement. Actually this framework and this final template class is hidden, so that's not visible for you. So that's what we are going to implement in here, right? So in this implementation, so I will implement with this one example. Let's say you have, so I will use the same example, servlet example. Let's say I will create a new one, right? New code. Let's say I'm going to implement my own servlet, right, like this. Let's say I'm going to implement a class called my servlet, right, and within that this is my servlet class, right? This should have lifecycle methods, and so I'm going to implement let's say another class. We have to use, we are going to extend HTTP servlet. So that's the framework, right? So in here I can implement let's say I don't want to implement at this level, so I will change this one into abstract, right? So this is an abstract method. So if you make something abstract, so you have to change the class again, it should be abstract. So we have abstract init, this is the service method, and we have to have another abstract method to implement. Let's say stop or terminate, right, or destroy, right? So most probably it should be like this. So now within my servlet I'm going to extend HTTP servlet like this. So then you have to override lifecycle methods. So in the actual implementation, sometimes you may see your init do, get, do, post like this, right? And you have to implement these, override these lifecycle methods. So in the actual service implementation within the servlet, again it check the HTTP request and it check what's the HTTP method is going to pass, right? If it is HTTP get or the post, based on that it decide, it call the do, get or do, post methods there, right, over there. So the same thing, I just modified it there. So definitely if it is a life cycle, there should be start and end, and so intermediately there will be like service methods, right? So now we have to specify the order. So how we are going to specify the order? In here, you can give any name for this, right? So in here I am going to call init service now this is the order. Within the framework I specify this is the order. I will make this one final, right? Then you can't override. Now this will call these methods according to this order, right? So in my implementation, in the test class, let's say I'm going to implement client. So in the client I can call this class. So I created servlet, so I'm going to create object of this, right? So this happens actually internally in the framework when you implement. And here I create my servlet, right? So you can call the template method. Now what will happen? In your servlet, now these are the operations that it will call. Like this. So within the template, if I change the order, if you change, let's say destroy first, service like this, then output will be different. Because this template is the person who defined the order, right? The steps. So in this example also, it gives the template method is a method which serves as a template for an algorithm, right? So algorithm, it contains set of steps are considered as these predefined steps. So we have to have separate order of execution for those methods, right? So there should be one handler. Handler is there in the framework, right? In the handler class, you have to specify. With having a separate method, we have to use it as the final, right? And how about the order of execution? So this gives like this. So in servlet you can find the service method. Within that, do get and do post methods are there. Again, if you use any other JSP class, again the same life cycle methods are available, right? So in here you can find within the service how it's going to call the relevant do get and do post methods, right? Based on this. So all these things it happens. And I will explain with some other example. It's there in the head first design pattern book regarding prepare a recipe. So this prepare recipe is something considered as the algorithm, right? These are the steps. So there are two recipes, right? So how we are going to prepare tea and coffee with having two separate ways. So add condiments. In here there are some common methods. For example, boil water is common for both, right? Therefore, in the abstract class, it implements these common methods, but adding contents, right, condiments and brew, so it would be vary in some other two separate classes like this, right? So I can make this beverage class as an abstract, and you can use boiled water and pour in cup, so that's common, therefore it's there in the abstract level. But in the subclass, again, adding contents and how we are going to use these things, tea, and so you strip in tea and then sugar, and then for this adding condiments, and stripping coffee to filters. So it's varying things you are going to put it in the subclass. And in here I will show the same example. It's over there. It's over here, I guess. So what will happen within the beverage class if I change the order? So this is hidden actually, you can't modify, that's why we make it final, right? Now what will happen? Boil water at the end, then like this, it changes the order of all algorithms, so it would affect. Like this. So in this example also similar like that. So that's what we use the template method pattern, right? So there are some other patterns, so most probably we will learn set of other patterns in software engineering lecture, and you can refer to the first design pattern book. So in the Bangalore 4 design patterns, there are like 23 patterns that you have to learn. So most important patterns we are planning to cover in the second year, and the software engineering and OOP. So if you want, you can refer some other patterns, so are available here, right? Okay, that's all.